You're listening to the Outdoors Group podcast. This podcast is a call to arms to get children and young people outside again. It's your one-stop shop for all things outdoor, child, young person and education related. Thanks for tuning in. I'm really excited today to be joined again by Beverley from the Outdoors School. Beverley is part of our dream team delivering Phase 3 of our bespoke curriculum at the Outdoors School. Phase 3 is the name that we've given to the provision for our Key Stage 4 learners, in other words, those who in a mainstream school would be embarking on a slew of GCSEs over year 10 and 11. She's kindly joined me to talk about her thoughts on this stage of education and the alternative approach that we're taking with our learners. Thanks for joining me today, Bev.
Nice to see you, Hannah.
So I know that you've been part of the creation and the development of our Key Stage 4 or Phase 3 element here. So how did you feel when first approaching this task? What were your kind of priorities for our learners?
Oh, good question. I felt excited because for me, it's the learner that leaves us at 16 that will probably be the measure of our school. So I was really excited to be asked to think up, implement and sort of put together what Phase 3 would look like.
Yeah.
And I think that for us, it's got to look different, as you've already alluded to the traditional GCSE offering that most mainstream schools do, because our learners, for one thing, probably are not going to be in the right place necessarily on that one day that exam might be for that subject, and then that's totally 2 years work out the window. So I was really excited to look along the lines again of the project-based learning, but be able to bring in some externally accredited courses that would suit our learners. And I think that it was exciting also to see the journey, and I really wanted to show that we can buck the trends. At the moment, the statistic says that only 16% of ASD adults are in full-time employment. And we really want to buck that trend and show that young people with ASD are more than capable of having fulfilling careers. And so I think that was the motivator for me was, we've got these wonderful young people who are thriving in the outdoors setting that we've got. Let's make sure our Phase 3 Key Stage 4 offering is what they really need from their point of view.
And were there any... So I think someone once said to me that if there's a mandatory kind of requirement for children at that age to do some form of English and maths. Is that true? Like they have to do a functional of some sort?
I think
we'll go into this a bit later on, probably.
Things change, don't they? But I think we would certainly be doing a disservice if we didn't fall into that kind of like expectation of education that young people come out at a certain level of literacy and numeracy. So that was a very important consideration. And we looked quite a lot at different examining boards, at different qualifications to see what would suit our learners best. And that could still evolve in the future because different cohorts may look different as they come through. But what we're trialling initially is functional skills and ASDAN awards, which we think are a good fit. Also, they can be delivered in a project-based way without the learners really always realising that they are doing some maths or some English or some ICT. So it can be quite sneaky delivery that suits them. But there's a lot out there, there's a lot of qualifications, and it may be over time we decide that we want to offer more. And it may be sometimes we might have a learner that really is keen to pursue a particular career, and they might need an art or a maths or geography GCSE, and at that stage we might need to get a specialised tutor in perhaps to help facilitate that. So we're not adverse to more traditional looking education, but our offering for our SCN learners has got to be bespoke
and learner-led,
and
as it is in
learner-led.
the earlier
Absolutely,
stages.
Absolutely.
Was it quite daunting, the task, when you kind of got given it, or
It was daunting because it's not like we can look at another school that does it similarly to us and say, well, how do you do it?
Yeah.
So it was very much starting from scratch, but I found a couple of other schools elsewhere in the country that have a similar ethos to ours. So it was very useful to go and do a couple of visits and just see how they delivered.
Yeah.
And that gave us some good inspiration.
Yeah.
But I think it's also having seen the progress and the paths that these learners have taken already with us, let the aspirations increase, that actually, that the work they can produce, it may not look traditional, it might not be sitting down and writing an essay, but it doesn't mean that their level of understanding and their level of creativity isn't the same, that can really achieve. But it's just making sure that we are always looking at the learner rather than our needs, if you like. We're always looking at the learner's needs and thinking about how they can best show their talents. And I think that's been the basis of it. So yes, it was daunting, but it was really exciting as well.
To be part of. Exactly. So obviously, as we just kind of mentioned, in most mainstream schools, in fact they do start GCSEs in year 9 for a lot of schools now. So you think year 9, year 10, 11, like the focus is GCSEs and limited freedom for students. They might get their options of geography or history or French or German, but there's not much freedom for them. And I mean, GCSEs are like rote learning, isn't it? It's like here's a bank of knowledge. Now let's try and get it in your head, so that when you do that exam, you can do it. So we've kind of just touched a little bit on the alternative approach you've taken, but how does it kind of actually work in practice? What does that kind of over those 2 years? What does it look like for the learners?
I think the huge difference is, rather than it being teacher-led, it is very much learner-led. And I think what's exciting is, now that we've got the phase 1 and 2 curriculum really developing, I think phase 3 will evolve further to make sure that it all really marries up well. But what we try to do is, we might have, again, an overarching project like we have talked about before, but within that the learners will come up with their own individual projects, and then it's the tutor's challenge to see how we can get the different areas that will fit into functional skills and the ASDANs out of that project, rather than us coming in from a sort of thinking, today we're doing literacy and we've got to cover writing a email. It'll be more, we've done a project around a particular area, and actually, because we've done that, can you send an email please to Chev telling him about exactly what you've done, because then the project's there, but they're then pulling out of that a skill that we need them to have. So it's really, really, really learner-led.
Can you give me an example of a project that you guys have done over so far?
So at the moment, we've tried to base a lot of our projects around a class book, and this term the year 10 group are doing Warhorse by Michael Morpurgo,
classic.
Which is a classic. It's also a local author, he's from Paynton, and we've got the Dartmoor link. The farm's on Dartmoor, we're going to be visiting the farm. But the big project is around history, World War One, and the learners listen to... The book is pitched slightly higher than a lot of their abilities, so it's very much the adults read, and then the learners enjoy the listening, but bits are picked out. But so from that, in the last few weeks, we've done a piece of work around writing a letter home from the trenches to a loved one. And we began that by them thinking about their senses, so what they could hear, see, touch, taste within. If they were in the trenches, what would that vocabulary be? What would that look like? And then we thought about, if you were writing home, our learners find empathy really hard. If you were writing home, would you want that loved one to know the reality of the horror of what you were going through? Or would you slightly rose-tinted it? Or what would you do? And then the final bit was they wrote the letters. And one of our learners, who is someone who he's a very closed book, and we spend a lot of time drawing him out of himself to have confidence in front of his peer group and us. And he decided that he was going to do his on his little learner laptop, and he said, I don't want any help. I don't want you to look at this. So he beavered away, and then the learners have got their own email addresses, and he said he was going to email to us at the end of the session. And Claire and I didn't get a chance to look until the end of the day. And when we opened it and read it, I'm not exaggerating, we were both in tears. And it is a phenomenal piece of work, which our head Robin is wanting to put on the website, etc. But it just showed that it had really fired his imagination, and within it he was really honest about, and he was very, very insightful into what it would be like. But he was really he was writing to his mum, about his experiences, but also about how he was missing his girlfriend at home, and it was just a beautiful piece. And I think that just showed we'd got the different skills in there, we'd got empathy in there, we'd got the understanding of what it was like back over 100 years ago to be in this war, and it was wonderful. We've done the learners have made horses, 3D horses.
Oh, nice.
They're brilliant.
Clay?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're going to do some wood ones as well, hopefully. They have they've done PowerPoints on the use of animals in the First World War. I've learned some stuff there. They've thought about conscription and what that would feel like as an 18-year-old, which isn't too far away from where they are.
A couple of years away from them, They've
cooked some recipes from what was eaten in the trenches. They've thought about women and how in the First World War suddenly this really was the start of women taking many more roles within society because the men had gone, jobs still had to be done. And it did a lot for raising women's rights, because people realised, wow, we can't, our economy can't exist without women, actually. So they've learnt a lot about that. And it's just endless. There's just huge amounts. They've looked at lots of maths to do with the number of soldiers that volunteered and how many came home.
And you said you're off to the farm.
We're off to the farm.
So it actually exists, the farm?
Yes, it really does.
Okay.
So we're doing a trip there.
And they do, obviously, educational tours.
Yes, I'm not sure they make too much of it, but because we obviously know Dartmoor, we know, and we can get to do a proper trip there. And they're going to take their digital cameras with them. They're going to take some photos. We're going to come back and also do a watercolour session based on the Dartmoor scenery, and obviously that hasn't changed, has it? Since the horses were taken from the farm. So a project like that we can literally do for a term. And the learners on different levels, some of them are really interested in World War One, some of them are really just interested in animals, or they're really interested in food or whatever it is. There's lots, and they learn. They say they've got questions, so they'll just find out things for themselves. It's very learner led, but the overarching project comes from us. But it's lovely, and it's just brilliant to see the work that they produce, their imagination being fired up, the questions they ask. And conversations they have at home as well about it. I think they're quite interested to find out more.
Because they're engaged in the subject, they'll go home and ask more questions about it.
It's interesting.
And I mean, just from those examples, you can see how it feeds into literacy and numeracy and history and art and food tech and
geography. We've looked at France and like where they were, how they got there. We've looked at transport. We've looked, just say how another thing which was a big thing for a lot of them was we talked about. Imagine now. You probably would be able to email, you'd be able to text. Then it was a letter. You don't know how long it's going to take to get even out of the enemy lines. Back, what was the process? Probably by horse. Probably it was going to take quite a long time to get home. Then the letter coming back to you, the communication was so slow. We've talked about carrier pigeons playing an important role, not in taking their letters, but in message taking. We've talked a lot about propaganda, that actually now we'd probably know the inside out of exactly what was happening. Then the sanitised version was what they heard at home, and therefore people did want to be volunteering, etc., to go and fight because they didn't know the reality of it. So the world has changed, and that's a really good sort of like way of looking at we've evolved and what will continue to evolve, but also whether is it good that we've got the technology now. What are the pros and cons, etc. So lots can come out of
it's good, because then that feeds into conversations about like fake news, doesn't it, and how to check your sources and
that's
things.
actually been a recent topic. They've done a fake news.
Have they? Oh, brilliant. I bet that was really fun.
So it's just so many links.
And
I think that gets the tutors fired up as well, just to be creative and think about all that you can draw out of a simple, fairly simple
a book basically.
Quite a short book, but a whole term's worth. Of really learner-led, project-based learning.
So you mentioned the ASDANs earlier. So we've talked about the functional skills. What are ASDAN qualifications? And
they're more vocational. And some of them are, once we're approved as a centre, which we are, we can. Some of them are moderated.
That's just an awarding body.
Yes, and some are internally moderated, and some are externally moderated, and on a level of a GCSE equivalent. So the learners cover things like the PSHE comes under it, gardening, cooking. they've an IT qualification, environmental studies, really expressive arts, lots and lots of different things.
So do they choose which ones they want to do?
Yeah, so we kind of like give they don't have total free rein. We give them options as to what's achievable within our environment, and the different modules add up, and at the end of year 11 they will be qualifying for a certificate of personal effectiveness, which is like a GCSE. It's nationally recognised, but it's got lots of different elements, and one learner may have chosen a lot of the expressive arts plus some of the IT plus the PSHE, and another might have done lots of the cookery. So again, it's a lot of their choice, a bit like they would choose those couple of options for GCSE. They can pursue some of their interests, which is really good. And also another one that they will do is work experience, which comes under ASDAN, the way they record when they go on one of their work experiences, the way they keep diaries, etc., do their own risk assessments. That also all counts towards it. So I think ASDAN's there are several bodies that do vocational awards, but it's a good fit for us.
And it sounds like a lot of transferable skills for adulthood as well.
Absolutely.
Like how many GCSEs do you do risk assessments for?
Absolutely. Yes. I think that's something that we've thought about a lot, is we're not going to be sending out young people that are going to be academically offering as much as some of their peer group, but we want them to have those life skills, to have had more work experience,
which arguably is more important than the academic
and
side
I think
anyway.
That's what employers now, they want young people that can actually step in to do a job, rather than young people that, great, they've got 10 GCSEs at A*, but they actually have no idea how to go into an interview and perform well, or how to answer a telephone,
or how to collaborate,
or how to be part of a team or whatever. So I think those skills are things that our learners are going to actually have more of than their peer group, and that will certainly, in things like interviews, will set them above, which is really positive.
Well, that leads us quite nicely to my next question, which is to say that, so not me obviously, but some critics might question whether the lack of 10, 11 GCSEs might hinder them. How would you address that concern? We've obviously just kind of touched on it a bit, but I
think possibly what career pathways our learners will aspire to will often be more practically based. They may be more around, not all of them, but some of them, it will be around land management, it will be around tree surgery, it might be I don't know.
You had a learner did work experience in the bike shop,
but
didn't you?
Bike maintenance, car maintenance, lots of different things. But I think we're going to be doing a lot of careers input with them, and also really illustrating that very different to perhaps our grandparents' generation, where a career was for life. These days a career pathway is probably going to include lots of different turns and journeys, and they're not going to be just earmarked for one thing. So if they've got those skills that are transferable, they've got that passion hopefully for lifelong learning, which we're really trying to promote or in all that we do, then it may be that the options will open up at different times for them. But I think the qualifications that we're offering will suit our learners, takes off a lot of the prep. One of the brilliant things about functional skills is we can book a slot when they do their actual exam, and if they're not up for it that day, we can change the date, which is so different to GCSE, which I think would set them on a back foot to start with, because they could be in a bad place on that particular day.
And also they'd have that pressure of knowing that day, it's everything on that day.
Absolutely. So that's really important, to take the pressure off them. And I think it's really important that they have the subjects that are really going to stand them in good stead. And if they've got the level 1 in functional skills, that is, employers know what that is. It's going to step them into apprenticeships, it's going to step them into colleges at a foundation level, and they're not going to be, they're feeling that they've really achieved, but it is attainable, and it's not going to be totally out of their range, which is, we've set them up to fail, which is really important. But yes, obviously there will be other young people of the same age group who will be going out with much more academic qualifications, but we truly believe that our young people will be very rounded and very ready for those next steps. And
I mean, anecdotally, I know lots of home educating parents that have gone to I can't remember what they're called, or the universities have a stand in a hall, like those kind of open day events.
Yes.
And they've said that so many of the university admissions people have said, we're much less interested in 10 GCSEs than we are 4, and a wealth of experience of like, and you think about, we could talk about the work experience, like, the work experience that the learners here do feels like it's probably more authentic maybe than in school, where you're just like, I've got to do 2 days of work experience, and then you go to your mum's lawyer's firm when you don't want to be a lawyer and just file paperwork for a week, like,
we want it to be what the learners' interests are, and we're going to, over time, it will take a while, but in the local area, so here, Exeter and the South Brent area, we're going to build up a kind of portfolio of employers who understand SEN, who we've got the risk assessments in place. So then when a young person, it really shows an interest in being a veterinary nurse, we've got that veterinary practice that we know will be supportive and will be able to really give them a good experience. Or someone wants to go in to be a barista, we've got that coffee shop that's there ready. So that's the aspiration for us as a team, is to build up over the next few years a really good bank of employers, and then it's not searching around at the last minute. We just know, oh yes, that's so and so, that's the perfect fit for this this experience that learner needs.
Because whilst it was 20 years ago, I do still remember that work experiences coming up and all of us going, what do we do? And everyone had like crap placements because no one really knew what they wanted to do at that point, because they didn't have that lifelong love of learning.
And it was just like a tick box, wasn't it? You have to do it. I'll go and be in my dad's solicitor's firm for a week.
I think I remember going to a local newspaper, but just filing papers for weeks. I didn't learn anything
or
about
photocopying.
I didn't learn anything about newspapers or journalism. It was just, I learned how to file.
Yeah, great. Well, that's probably a good skill.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. So you just mentioned about building up a bank of people that kind of understand autism, and the fact that a lot of our learners are autistic or neurodiverse or got special educational needs. So how does our approach work particularly well for these young people? We've touched on it a little bit with the lack of pressure with not having all the exams on one day, but what other things kind of feed into supporting them with their needs?
I think the biggest thing I absolutely 100% believe in is that we're outdoors. I honestly believe that's therapeutic. I think that being learner-led, rather than putting a lot of adult pressure on these young people to do what we think they should do or we think they should learn, makes a huge difference. I think all our pastoral support, our SCMH support that we give, if the learner's not ready to learn when they come in to school in the morning, that's absolutely fine. The learner's got to be ready, and there's no point there will be no learning happening until they are ready. So I think we're so good at the grounding, we're so good at like understanding emotionally where we are as adults and where they are as well. We're brilliant at communicating with home as a school, so our parents and carers feel able to tell us if it's been a bad weekend or what place their young person may be in that morning that might be a hindrance. I think we are good at getting to know our young people because we work in small groups, so that we know them so much better than we would do if we had a class of 30.
And presumably they're not, obviously, again, in the school, they'd be moving classroom 5 times a day, so the tutor,
absolutely, the tutor knows them really well. I think we play to our strengths as adults. We've got a good team, and if one adult's better at delivering art aspects of a project, then they will. So we play to our team's strengths as well. And I think the proof's in the pudding. The learners' attendance is 95%. They want to be here at the outdoor school. So I think we are doing it right. And I think we're also really good at being self-reflective and tweaking and amending what we're doing. And that shows by the fact that we're evolving, and the phases are becoming established, and they will change probably with time again. But we're not rigid, we're flexible, we're learner-led, we're we're always doing things experimentally. We don't mind, we'll just try something. Might not do it again, but we've tried it. And the learners and they like that. They like we can make mistakes as adults, they can make mistakes, and it's fine. And I think it's taking the pressure off. We don't set homework. I've never been a great believer in homework.
No. I always think that you spent 6 hours at school. Surely it's time to relax when you get home, not do another 3 hours.
There's other things to do. So all those things, I think, go together and really enhance our learners. And for me, it's about opening doors. A lot of our learners come to us when they've had so many doors shut in their face for whatever reason, because they haven't been able to cope with mainstream education. And I think we open those doors. We're widening their opportunities and their life chances by everything we're doing. And we will send out young people who are ready for those next steps and will do really well because they've got a little bit more self-belief. They're able to function in the world, and they will really do very well in life. I'm confident of that.
I was just thinking about that statistic you said at the beginning about 16%. But that's mad, isn't it?
It's horrendous.
That's a really low percentage. But what do you think the barriers are for people? I mean, obviously we're hoping to overcome them all.
I think there's a lot of prejudice in society when people know somebody has a label. But I also think it's even parents of those learners having low aspirations, not thinking they're going to manage to be able to live self-sufficiently and have a career. But I think what's bizarre is quite often the very things that make someone be on the autistic spectrum are the very things that to an employer can be real assets, because they love routine. They love to know what time they're due to work, what's expected of them, and once they know those things, they'll probably be the absolutely most brilliant employee because they will love to be successful at that niche thing that they're doing. So for us, it's about encouraging them to find what they are interested in, and for us to help them to pursue that, and for the parents to believe, actually, my son or daughter can do this, and be supportive in that.
So it's raising the aspirations of the parents as well as the
raising
kids,
the aspirations of us as staff, raising the aspirations of the learners, the parents, and our communities. When we can start to show what our alumni are doing, and maybe publicising that locally and nationally, who knows, I think we are going to buck the trend, and I think we are going to break down those barriers. They do exist, but there's no reason why we can't be showing that they do not need to exist, and that people on the autistic spectrum can really be successful in life and hold down excellent jobs, get a lot of fulfilment out of their careers, and do really well. Absolutely.
You told us obviously about one of the projects you did. Is there I was just going to ask about if there's anything specific that they're working towards where being in the outdoor environment is particularly supporting their goals.
So one thing we are getting off the ground at the moment is we've got, I guess it's maybe half an acre area that we're going to be turning into an allotment. It's slowly, because when we came it was all covered with huge brambles, but a lot of the area is cleared now. We're setting up a wildlife pond, and ultimately in the future we hope that we'll be growing a lot of vegetables and fruit and salad and things that make us almost self-sufficient on that. And another aim is an enterprise project long term is to hopefully have a cafe on site, and we've got a bit of a captive market here because we've got a cottage, I don't know what you call them now, but a small hospital site, and we also have the outdoor group staff often working on the same site. So we've got a building which is going to have a full kitchen in. And the long-term plan is to have a simple menu, but to be able to take pre-orders from customers to make paninis and soups and things. The young people will have a bank account. They will budget. They will get the ingredients. They will do the menus. They will do the cooking. They'll serve the people.
That's amazing. So then presumably they'll have to
stuff that they're growing.
Then there's things like being able to get the food hygiene
absolutely
as well, so that's another thing to add
absolutely on to. And hopefully develop and cooking qualifications, and working with the public, and thinking about profit and loss, and thinking about budgeting. So that's
and then
something
all the gardening as well.
Absolutely. So that's kind of like something that our site is going to lend itself to really well.
So we're obviously in October at the moment. So next year will be like your first proper growing season.
So we had raspberries, potatoes, rhubarb this first season. But we just hadn't been able to, without estates helping us, we hadn't cleared much of the site. So we've got quite a bit cleared now. So yes, hopefully we've managed to get a grant for £500. So we've got lots of seeds and we've got some lovely tools, and the learners have an afternoon doing the work on the area, which soon will look like an allotment. But that's exciting.
That's really exciting.
And we couldn't really do that if we weren't so outdoors.
We're outdoors, yeah. In fact, sorry, this is not on my list of questions, but I was just thinking about that. Obviously, I've spoken to other people from the school about how the outdoors lends itself to the kind of the way that we do education. But I guess I was just thinking about it. Obviously, where they are doing some qualifications that require, you mentioned learner laptops earlier.
Yeah.
How do you kind of balance that? Because they've got a classroom here.
Yeah, so a bit different. This site, because we're phase 3, we've got one lovely indoor space which has reliable internet. And
always key.
Always key. And the learners have, I think it was through some sort of funding, the learners have got notebook type laptops, I think they're called. So we try not to use them too much, but if we need them to send an email or write a blog, or their strength is much more in typing rather than if writing's a barrier to them, then they've got those available, and they produce excellent work like that. And and a lot of the tests that they'll be doing will be online. Yeah. So they're getting the good practice, and it's a skill they need. They need to have word processing skills in this day and age. Yeah. So it's an important skill as well. But we try in our day. We have 3 main learning sessions, and 2 of them minimum are outside every
outdoors,
day.
Yeah.
1, there's the potential to use the indoor space,
okay.
but because we've got 3 groups, or we will have 3 groups eventually. That we only want 1 group inside at a time anyway. But so that works well. But it also means some of our other sites are affected by the wind and having to close. Here we don't have to shut for the wind because we can get indoors if necessary, that also enhances our offering of our curriculum, if you like, because we are here every day.
Yeah, you know that it's never going to get cancelled.
Yeah, we're not going to get closed, so that's good.
That's really good.
But yes, I think being out, I think all our learners by this stage, obviously none of them are just joining us fresh here, they've come through the school.
Through the process. So they have to do phase 1 and phase 2 of the curriculum to get to phase 3.
They do really. Yeah. Some of them might have joined at slightly different times, but they will certainly have had some of that approach already. Yeah. So that means that they are already able to perhaps come up with their own projects that they want to do. They're used to being outdoors, and they're brilliant with tools. We still do a lot of the sort of tool-based learning here as well within our projects. Being outdoors is the key to what we do. I think so.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about our phase 3 or key stage 4 provision that we haven't covered?
I think watch this space. We're going to be excited in July with the sort of first leavers, and we're going to be excited this January because we're going to have our 3rd group joining us, the Year 9, so that will be really exciting.
So and you'll take on Year 9s as well as the
yes. Okay. And at South Brent we'll have our first group of Year 9s as well who will stay at South Brent. So yes, exciting times. Staff teams growing, and very exciting. Onwards and upwards. Yeah,
really exciting. Well, thanks so much for your time today. I know you're a busy lady.
Thank you, Hannah.
Before we finish, because you've already done the podcast before when we talked about project-based learning, where I asked you my 3 questions, I've got 2 different questions to close today.
Okay.
Well, one of them is the same, to be fair, because it changes. My first one is, what are you reading or listening to right now?
What am I reading or listening to?
Because I presume that's not the same as it was a year ago.
No. I don't read. I'm just probably because I'm so old. I'm not so into thinking about podcasts and things to listen to, although I do listen to the Outdoor School ones.
Nice plug.
Obviously. And my memory is so bad, but I'm reading at the moment a good, totally mind-numbing book. Oh my goodness gracious me! I'm trying to think who the author is. I can't even think. But it's a psychological thriller.
Oh, okay, lovely.
At the moment, but yes, I should
that's
maybe
your release from.
Yeah, I do. So I do read some more. I mean, a book I did read recently, and I love, and I certainly would recommend, is The Tent, the Bucket, and Me.
Okay.
Anyone my age who grew up in the 70s would love it.
Okay.
It's by someone called Emma Williams. It's autobiographical, and it's just such fun about a girl. girl's camping exploits with her teacher parents
Okay.
growing up in the 70s.
Yeah.
Every single one's a disaster, but they go again the next year. And it's lots of fun. So that's a good one to read.
Okay, that does sound fun. And my last question is, what is your favourite thing to do in the outdoors during the winter months?
Outdoors in the winter months is going on Dartmoor with my dog for a long walk. And I live on the edge of Dartmoor, so very lucky.
Those winter days where it's like crunchy underfoot with frost.
Love
I love those.
Yeah,
the
I
cold
do.
sunshine. Yeah, just special.
So yes, even in my own time, I'm still outdoors a lot of the time.
That does seem to be true of most of the people that work here.
It does.
Probably why we work here.
I think so.
But yeah. Oh, thanks so much for your time today, Bev.
Thank you, Hannah. Pleasure.
And thanks very much. A big thank you again to Bev from the Outdoors School for coming to join us to talk about the alternative approach that we take to Key Stage 4 education. We hope that whether you're a parent, an educator, or just someone who's interested in the way we do things, that you enjoyed listening to that conversation. If you did, we would love it if you would share the episode with someone, rate it on your podcast platform, and rate the show, and just subscribe so that more people can find us. We'll be back in a fortnight with another episode, and until then, thanks for listening.